It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. We're kicking off 2022, our 5th anniversary, which is so exciting for Her Success Story, with an amazing friend, colleague, and speaker. Frank King is a motivational public speaker who uses his life lessons to start the conversation, giving people permission to give voice to their feelings and experience surrounding depression and suicide. He is also a major Tedx speaker. He speaks at conferences all over the country and then some. More than that, Frank brings his great sense of humor to make conversation for entrepreneurs, business leaders in all industries real, fun, and relatable. Frank, thanks for joining me today.
I am delighted to be. Is this the premiere show of the fifth season? Is that?
It is not the premiere show of the 5th season. It's the first month of our 5th season of Her Success Story.
Okay. Well, and by the way,
where we interview great women and a few exceptional men. And thank you, Frank, for being one of those.
Well, and I credit my mother for that. She was a natural born networker. I learned how to network at her knee. I didn't know that's what I was learning. Her big thing, and she probably never said it this way, but was give value first without expectation of return. And she just loved helping people simply because she could. The phone rang day and night. Her name was Dixie. Dixie, can you help me with? Oh, absolutely. She was just wired that way. And by osmosis, I became, and I thought everybody Ivy knew that the secret to building a business was networking and how to do it. I found out when I saw my first book on it at Barnes & Noble, people don't know how to do this. They have to read about it.
It's so funny you say that, because when I started Slater Success back in 2008, I didn't know. People were like, well, can you teach that? I'm like, everybody, that's ridiculous. I've never heard of anything so crazy. You know, and they're like, well, how do you develop business? I said, you build relationships. They're like, oh, can you come in and teach that? I'm like, is this kindergarten? I truly didn't understand that people get paid for this back in my early days.
Yes, and I live in a market, Eugene, Springfield, Oregon. It's 40,000 people, depending on how many students are at U of O. But it's a very relationship selling town. So my advice to young entrepreneurs in this town, look, first 6 months, don't sell anything, just show up. Chamber meetings, B&I meetings, and when you speak to someone, ask them, hey, what can I do for you? Not shove the business card in their hand and say, this is what I do. And some people catch on to that. And some people, that just seems like I'm speaking a different language.
So tell me how, let's go back for a second. How did you start becoming a professional speaker and then building a business around, where I want to look where your business is, but how did you actually start in this realm?
Well, I was a comedian first, started in 84. I did comedy clubs for 2,629 nights in a row, nonstop. There's some battle training. And with my lovely wife who came along just for the ride. And then
good woman.
I'm still married to her. The comedy club thing melted down in about mid-90s. So I became a corporate speaker, comedy. I did corporate comedy, no message, just good, clean stand-up till the last recession. And then business dropped off precipitously. And when it came back, they said, Frank, we love you. We just can't pay you that kind of money simply to be funny. You have to teach our audience something. So I cast about for something because I always wanted to make a living and a difference. And so I thought, you know what, given my family's mental health history, more nuts than a squirrel poop, and my two mental illnesses and close call with suicide, I thought I could tell my story and teach suicide prevention. And then, of course, I had to rebrand. And I spent a lot of time with my speaker coaching clients talking about branding and rebranding. And my wife goes, do a TEDx. And I said famously, what's a TEDx?
What's that?
Yeah. And
how do I do that?
Just so happened that week, I got an email from a TEDx event in Vancouver, British Columbia, said, would you please apply? I said, sure. So I applied. I got it. I spoiled. I got my first one. And I came out on stage as depressed and suicidal. Nobody knew, not even my wife. And I gave advice on how do you spot signs of depression, thoughts of suicide. That was the learning objectives, and what to do and what to say and so forth. So up on stage, very vulnerable. I'd never told anybody that I was depressed and suicidal. And that was the beginning of my rebranding. I've done 5 more TEDx's on mental health, mental illness, again, to rebrand and to build the brand. And what I realized in that process is I believe that you should go deep, not wide, that the riches are in the niches. That back in the day when I started in the speaking business, people didn't mind having a generalist come in, somebody who spoke on half a dozen things. Nowadays, it seems like they want the expert or the thought leader. They want that person. So I decided I'm just going to speak on suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue. And I believe any business, regardless of what it is, you need to figure out what it is you do extremely well, better than other people, and focus on that. And then, second step, decide who your ideal clients are. Michael Port wrote a book called Book Yourself Solid. And his thing is the velvet rope theory. You own a high-end bar, and the only people you let pass the velvet rope are your ideal clients. And your business should be the same way. If somebody comes up and they're not an ideal client, don't just turn them away. Refer them to somebody who does what they're looking for. So I selected a half dozen ideal clients. It makes marketing so much easier and SEO so much easier. If you go to Suicide Prevention Speakers Dental on Google, you will see that I've got a half a dozen organic listings and 2 videos on page 1, because my marketing is so focused on those 5 or 6 occupations with a high rate of suicide. But regardless of what business you're in, I think it begins with finding a niche, go deep, not wide, and then figure out who your ideal clients are and just serve them well.
It's so funny because Slater Success, for those listeners who have followed us for a while, is my second business. I was in the printing industry for many, many years. I had a very, very specific niche market, which I did very well with. I opened Slater Success, and I was going to serve every professional woman. They needed me. I'm here. I understand. I'm a professional woman. I'm a working mother. These women need me. And I couldn't put 2 pennies together until I started niching down and become really laser focused. And it's amazing because I think so many business owners out there say, yeah, I'm kind of niched, right? But when you can literally in a sentence kind of pull that together, like, you said, go to, mental health and dentists. There's Frank.
And I'm doing a gig at the end of the month in New York City for a big construction. They're building a building in New York near Manhattan, apparently. 1,000 construction workers. Construction has a high rate of suicide. A guy called me up. I said, how'd you find me? He goes, Frank, I typed in suicide prevention speakers, construction, and you just kept coming up. And I thought to myself, this is obviously the guy. And that's what I tell my clients. You want to no longer be just a commodity. If they're looking for X, you don't want to be just another X. You want them coming looking specifically for you. And it's a long game. But if you focus and you niche and you niche and you niche, and like I said, if you can describe what you do, I speak on suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue. Somebody said to me, what else? That's it.
That's what you do.
That's what I do. And I get pitched all the time for some sort of, don't you want to get into Bitcoin, and don't you want to do this, whatever, you get just a couple hours a week. You can look, I gave up side hustles on January 1st, 2018. I decided I'm going to do nothing but what I do now, speak on suicide prevention. And I got to tell you, it made all the difference. Like I started bumping. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Okay. So when you made that decision in January of 2018, and by the way, her success story launched in January of 2018. So happy anniversary to you too on the 5th year. When you made this decision, what did you see shift in your business, and then that ripple effect that comes into your life?
It seemed like I'd finally locked on to my purpose and my passion. That I go to bed thinking about it, wake up thinking about it. I bump into people who are involved in the industry. It just seemed like everything, like the universe finally went, oh, thank God. Now let me help you. And I have a gig for NASA, the JFK, the Kennedy Space Center later this month. I got it because somebody seen me somewhere and somebody said to somebody, we need a mental health speaker for March. And she goes, Frank King. Oh, dear God, I saw him. So you become that guy or that gal or that non-binary, whatever it is. It's now here's the thing. One thing I learned in my economics degree in Chapel Hill is something called opportunity cost. That's why a lot of business owners do not want to niche, because they figure they're missing all the opportunities outside that niche. And what I tell my clients is, look, short-term loss, long-term gain.
Long-term gain.
Yeah,
That's right.
you are. And if somebody calls up and wants stand-up comedy, I'll be happy to book it. I just don't market it. Or I can add it as added value. Could you do a keynote and then entertain at the banquet? Absolutely. And I tell my clients I charge by the day. I don't charge by the keynote. Meeting planner said to me, we're paying you how much for a keynote? I go, you're not paying me for that 45 minutes. You're buying me for the day. I'll do a keynote, a breakout. I'll acid wash the pool at the hotel. I don't care. I'm yours for the day.
And I love that philosophy, because I'll very often go in and I will say to that meeting planner, I will speak on this. I could do break. Would you like your top tier executives to have a roundtable specifically around what they're looking to achieve based off this conference? I'm happy to run that for you. They're like, oh, you'll do that? How much is that? It's like, no, that's included.
Yes.
Added value. Added value.
Yeah, I learned it in radio. They oftentimes they'll go, yeah, we'll give you a couple of remotes, this many spots, and whatever else. So a couple of live reads on the morning show. It was all about added value. Didn't cost the radio station anything else, but.
And I learned it in printing. A lot of my niche market was magazine publishing, and we did all the promotional materials that magazines sold to their marketplace, their advertisers. So if a fashion magazine was selling to a fashion brand X, Y, and Z, and like, oh, we'll add value and we'll print a postcard for you. And I was like, yay, let's add some value.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult sometimes for my speaker clients, and I imagine for other entrepreneurs, to ask for, to charge what they're really worth. And I started all my speakers. I said, look, you're $5,000 plus travel if anybody asks. And they're like, $5,000? I go, here's the thing. It's a price point in speaking. At $5,000, there's a perceived value. That's what you're trying to create. They figure if you're charging $5,000 for 45 minutes, you must know what you're talking about. And I said, some outfits will not book you at less than $5,000 because they figure it's a hobby. Yeah. You can always discount, and I show them several ways to get value for value. But you might as well quote retail. I always quote retail first. Oftentimes when I quote my fee, I say, you sitting down? Which prepares them for far worse. They go, oh, that's not so bad.
So if we look at your business model, I know one of the pieces of your business model is very focused on Tedx. Mm-hmm. So why is it important? Why do you think business leaders are getting up on Tedx stages? Why is it advantageous to them? And who are these people?
Well, there are speakers, obviously, and authors. They've got a book. They want to increase book sales. You can't sell from the stage on TED, but you can talk about all the wonderful things in your book. And of course, they can Google you and find the book right away. Coaches, I think John Maxwell trains coaches, and he recommends that, let's get a TEDx, because on your homepage, there you are in the post, in the thumbnail with the big red letters behind you. And your demo happens to be a sizzle reel of your TEDx or TEDx's. Is a third party, the curation team for TEDx, have vetted you and said, this is a good idea. So, because people ask me, have you ever booked a gig because of a TEDx? I can't draw a straight line to any engagement. But if I'm in competition with another speaker on the same topic, or two speakers, whatever, and I've got a TEDx or 2 or 6, there's it's credibility, marketability, and visibility. You can get a TEDx, and I tell them, look, that's great, but you have to leverage that. It doesn't end with the TED. You have to make that work for you. So many views, and it's not just views and shares and likes, it's conversions. You need to have that TEDx help generate conversions for whatever it is you do.
And, I think an important piece when you look at credibility, and it's looking at you brought up New York, and it's my hometown, and it's, here I refer to it as street cred.
Yeah.
It's street cred. It doesn't make you good. It doesn't prove you're good. And it gives you an ability to have some street cred, some skin in the game. Well, I've done this, this, and this, so when you're looking at that quote unquote, like resume, it's like, oh, that's good. That's good. It's good to see on LinkedIn. It's good to see, right? And it pulls you out of a crowd. It's one of the components that pull you out of a crowd. And
I suggest that I've got a client with a book called Sober Letters to My Drunken Self. And I said, he's obviously in recovery. And I said, well, have you bought the URL Sober Letters? And he goes, no. So I said, go to Daddy right now and buy that. So you have a book by that title, Sober Letters to My Drunken Self. You now have a URL that's the first two words of that title. We're going to pitch your TEDx as Sober Letters to my, just Sober Letters, and then explain it in the subtitle. And then, so you need a podcast called Sober Letters. So now you have 4 elements in branding, so that when somebody comes looking, they go, oh, I can't remember the guy's name. Just type in Sober Letters and speaker. He'll come up. That's what we're after, is that, that you become memorable. Each thing reinforces the brand as you're going along. So TEDx is a great branding tool. Again, if you leverage it, if you take a part of your book title and buy the URL and call the TED that, and maybe do a podcast with that title, that's 4 elements of branding right there.
So one piece that, I feel that we have to touch on because of your expertise is there's a lot of business leaders, a lot of entrepreneurs in a variety of different niche markets, for lack of a better word, who listen to her success story. And one of the conversations you and I have had is the amount of depression and suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel we wouldn't be of service because, when we're out there, Frank, you and I, and we're going to networking groups, it's filled with other leaders and entrepreneurs and business owners. So what do we need to know as laymen that we can be there and support and help one another?
Well, I think I told you when we chatted offline, I did some research. I came across a couple of articles, studies that 1/3 of entrepreneurs, a full 1/3, are depressed and suicidal. Now, clinicians will tell you it's because of long hours, little sleep, and unmet expectations. And I believe a lot of them are probably like that. But I'll bet you there's a slice of that population that's depressed and suicidal are not depressed and suicidal because they are entrepreneurs. They are, in fact, entrepreneurs because they were depressed and suicidal. That's where I was. I was married to a wonderful woman, but we didn't belong together. I was selling insurance, great business, but didn't. And I wasn't going to the comedy store and doing an open mic night. And I literally was going to kill myself if something didn't change. I have a TEDx called Suicide, the Secret of My Success. I think a lot of entrepreneurs come to the point where, look, this is not my life. I should not be here. I should be over there pursuing my dream. And so they figure, if I stay put, I'm going to kill myself. So why not go ahead and roll the dice? And I thought I was the only one who ever thought like that. And I met half a dozen entrepreneurs since then that had the very same thought process. If I don't do something, if I don't pursue that dream, I'm going to kill myself. Well, what the heck? I can try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, I can always kill myself. What you're looking for is depression. There's a couple, 3 sort of symptoms that stand out. One is the diet and sleep patterns. Eat too much, can't eat, sleep too much, or can't sleep. They seem to have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, but then when you're with them in the afternoon, they've rallied. And here's one to watch out for. You can see this on Zoom. If they've let their personal hygiene go, if usually they're pretty well put together, but you notice hair's a little dirty, clothes are kind of, it may be because they're having trouble getting out of bed, running a little wash, and taking a shower. So the question comes up, what do you say to somebody you believe is depressed? Well, here's what you don't say. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Turn that frown upside down. Choose joy. That's my favorite. I said, look, if you're not talking about dishwashing liquid, I'm out of luck. Here's what you do say. I'm here for you and I mean it. I know that depression is a mental illness. Now, here's the good news. With time and treatment, things will get better. I will take the time. I will help you get that treatment. And then comes the most difficult question of all. Are you having thoughts of suicide? Jamie Raskin, congressman, son died of suicide. And I heard him on a show last night talking about his book, which details, leading up to. And he says, The thing he did wrong was he never brought up the subject of suicide, although he suspected his son was suicidal. He was afraid that if he brought it up, it would somehow push him in that direction. He now realizes that you have to start the conversation because it takes some of the power out of those thoughts for that young person or old person. It's all about starting the conversation. So let's say somebody, you believe they're suicidal, and I say go like Jamie Raskin's dad. He felt like his son was suicidal, but didn't act on it. How would you know? Well, they talk about death and dying. They Google death and dying. It appears as a theme in their artwork, their music, maybe their writing. They're getting their affairs in order, giving away prized possessions because they want to make sure they go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone. You catch them collecting the means, medication, stockpiling, or buying a firearm. Now, here's one that's dangerous and counterintuitive. They've been depressed forever, and all of a sudden, no apparent reason, they're happy. And you're happy because they're happy. They may be happy because they have chosen time, place, and method, and they know the pain is coming to an end. What a lot of people don't understand about suicide is not most often about wanting to kill yourself. I didn't want to kill myself. I simply wanted to end the pain. So what do you say to somebody who is forthcoming? Yes, I'm thinking about suicide. Well, you say, do you have a plan? If they have a plan, what is your plan? And if it's detailed, time, place, method, you need to get them on the phone with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, or for younger people nowadays, they have a text line. Text HELP to 741-741. HELP to 741-741. Now, that's as far as the literature goes on that conversation. A psychiatrist who has the same thing I do, chronic suicidal ideation, we came up with the next step. Suppose they got a plan, but it's not really well, formed. What in the world do you say then? Well, we decided you should say, are you going to kill yourself? And if they say no, you say, okay, tell me why not? Because something is keeping them here, and make them give voice.
I was just going to say, make them vocalize.
Vocalize it. Yeah. And then from there, it's try to develop. Would you let me help you develop a way to keep you safe for today? Take it a day at a time. So if you ask me, Ivy, why have you not killed yourself? Because I have chronic suicidal ideation. Why am I still here? One of my reasons is my mom and dad wanted to have children desperately. My mom, they worked at it, and she got pregnant and carried to term 9 months. And shortly after birth, it passed away. And then a year later, she got pregnant again and carried it to term. And shortly after birth, it passed away. Somehow, some way, she found the courage to try again. And then a fourth time, my sister was born. So the reason I'm still here, one of the big reasons, is because my mother was so brave and worked so hard to bring me here that I feel like I must work as hard and be at least as brave to stay until my appointed time.
And as you're doing that, you're making a difference to industries, leaders in what you do. And I thank you for that.
Oh, sure.
This is not always, an easy conversation to have. It is not an easy conversation to have. It's an important conversation. The pandemic has challenged a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And it's important to talk about this. And it's also important to see, Frank is a great comedian. He's a fun guy. He gets on stage, he makes a difference, and he helps others continue to get on stage and make a difference. So thank you for that. Frank, how can our listeners follow you and be in touch?
Well, they go to The Mental Health Comedian, or as we say down south, thementalhealthcomedian.com. If you go there, I'm co-author and narrator on a 4-book series on men's mental health. And the first book, if you put your email address in, there's an MP3. It's me narrating the first volume unabridged, and it's free.
Wonderful.
So it's for men or someone who loves them and is having a great deal of trouble figuring out most of our sales are to women because they've got a guy in their life and they just cannot figure out how to help in a mental health challenge situation. So that's what the books are really all about.
Fabulous. Frank, thank you so much for joining me today on Her Success Story.
Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to be one of these select group of men.
And listeners, for those of you who are new to us, here's the next directions. take a moment and think about what you took away from today's conversation with Frank and I, and what are you going to do about it? Listening is great. Action is better.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for joining us today on Her Success Story. If this meant something to you, share it forward, share it with your community, and subscribe. We come into your podcast apps every Monday morning, bright and early, with wonderful interviews like today's interview with Frank. Thank you, listeners, and see you next time.